Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Forgive me tonight for the lateness. I'm broadcasting to you from Lakewood, New Jersey, from the basement of one of my favorite Talmidim. Hashem should bless Gal and his Rebbe, that their home should always be filled with Harbatzat Torah to the entire Klal Yisrael. You should be zochet to banim ubnei banim talmidei chachamim. Amen ken yehi ratzon. For all the Rebbes out there, I'm starting this class with a birachat to you. You should be zoche to have one gal like this Talmud. It's a matan min hashamayim. Kidarkenu bakodesh, I'd like to start with a biracha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol nihiyah bidvaro. I'm not sure how to start this class tonight. I'm here in Lakewood, New Jersey tonight, waiting to hear Besurot Tovot. I go to pray mincha in a local shtibel, a shul. And as I'm walking outside, a very distinguished, a very tall and good-looking Hasidic older man walks up to me. And he looks at me and says, Rabbi Ben Shushan, I listen to your classes, and my son follows a lot of your Torah. I want to ask you a question. At this time, after what just happened in Meron, it must be very difficult to be able to speak to the tzibur. What do you say? Wow, did he take that right out of my mouth. Wow, I've been walking around in circles with tears, with Tehillim in hand, asking Borei Olam, what do you say? I turned to the mensch and I said to him, this is a time of silence. It's a time of healing. Sometimes when you don't say is the best thing said. And the silence is deafening. And Klal Yisrael is crying. And we need this cry. We need it. You know, a person, they need to be able to get it out. And we're in pain. Get it out. In silence. And cry. Because after what just took place, there is no one that could or should try to begin with gematriot, rimazim. Let Klal Yisrael heal. We're a people that are masters at bouncing back from the worst. We've been doing it for 2,000 years. We've been going through anything and everything that's imaginable and unimaginable in the last 2,000 years. And these are the birth pangs that are bringing us down to that great moment that we can finally close it. But the bottom line is, let us heal in a time of silence. And the silence is deafening. But you'll see that we will stand back up and we will pull together again. And Klal Yisrael is going to see Yeshuot. Because that very day, that Friday of this past week, I got a phone call from my Rebbe, Meir Shalom Rabinovich Shalita, who was already in Meron from 2 days before Lag BaOmer. Him as Rebbitzin, they take a tzimmer. They have a room, and they're there for days on end. So they were there from a day or two before, then Thursday night, Friday day, into Shabbat. They spent Shabbat in Meron as well. So my Rebbe called me Friday afternoon, Israel time, Friday morning, New York time. To get a call from my Rebbe is not a simple thing. When he calls me, I know this is something. It's a big call. It's one of those calls that you drop everything and pick up the phone fast. I said, Rebbe, is everything okay? Are you okay? He says, Baruch Hashem, I'm okay. And then right after he said that, he broke out crying. I never heard my Rebbe cry. No Talmud should ever hear their Rebbe cry. It's like hearing your father cry. Did you ever hear your father cry? You know what that does to a Talmud? You know what that does to a child when they see their parents cry? Here is the person that in your life, in your world, represents the rock. They're the biggest, strongest force in your world. To watch them start to melt and cry in front of you, that's an experience. Hopefully it's inspiring instead of traumatizing. It could be a little bit of both. How someone that strong and that big can cry, and yet someone that strong and that big is crying. Two sides of a sword. When I heard my Rebbe cry, I broke down crying. And together we wept together on each other's shoulders, although we were 6,000 miles apart from each other. But we wept for Klal Yisrael, for what just took place, in silence. And we kept being mechazik each other, again and again and again. That the Rebbe Shalom knows what he's doing. And the definition of emunah is not that there is a God. Hashem doesn't need our approbation. Emunah doesn't mean faith that there is a God. Hashem doesn't need our haskama. He exists, whether you agree to it or not. He exists. But rather, emunah means that Hashem is in charge, and everything that happens is from Him, and it's done for the best. And I have faith in that whatever took place and takes place and will take place is done by my Father, the one that loves us beyond what we know what love means, and He's doing it for the best, period, even though I don't have a clue or understand any of it. Mamash kacha. I don't understand any of it. But I'll cry together with my brothers because Daddy knows best. So me and Rabbi Rabinovich are crying on the phone for it felt like forever. Probably it was about 3-4 minutes. Till finally he catches his breath. And he says to me, Reb Chaim David, that's what he calls me. Reb Chaim David. I said, yes, Rebbe. He said to me in Yiddish, I want to tell you something. Wir verstehen nicht. We have no understanding of why or what just took place. And he kept repeating over and over again, time and time again, Nahale Demaot, he kept saying. Nahale Demaot. Rivers of tears. Rivers. Rivers of tears. And when I heard that, I broke down crying again. But after he said it again and again, Nahale Demaot, wir verstehen nicht, wir verstehen nicht, wir verstehen nicht. We cannot understand this. We cannot understand the Cheshbonei Shamayim. But we're Nasa v'Nishma people. We didn't sign up for this on the base of understanding. We actually signed up for this on the base, even if we don't understand. Nasa v'Nishma. And that's what we said by Har Sinai. And that's this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha is Parashat Behar. But it's so interesting. This Parsha has nothing to do with Har Sinai. This Parsha is all about Eretz Yisrael, Israel. It's all about Shemitah, Shvitat Haaretz, the resting of the land. This week the land isn't resting. This week the land is crying. So what's the connection between Har Sinai and Shvitat Haaretz? Well, maybe here's a thought. By Har Sinai, we accepted the Torah Nasa v'Nishma, Shvitat Haaretz. we accepted Eretz Yisrael. Nasa v'nishma. We don't understand. But that doesn't change a thing. We're going to stand back up. We mechazik each other. Just like Behar Sinai. Ki ish echad ubelev echad. An achdut like never seen before, what stood at that moment of the mountain. Whether it be the mountain of Sinai or the mountain of Meron, we're standing together and we're being mechazik each other. A close friend of mine, Rebbe Menachem Cantor from Eretz Yisrael, he sent me today something that to me I was amazed. I believe it was a clip or a write-up in one of the local Israel papers. A description of two guys, Chiloni, non-religious in any which stripe of the way. Matter of fact, in the write-up, they went out of their way to describe what they look like when they decided to go out to the home of an ultra-Haredi family, a Yerushalmi family, who lost two sons in the tragedy of Meron. And these two Chilonim, they described themselves, they walked into the house of mourning, the Shiv'ah, in a t-shirt, jeans, ripped jeans, heavy metal t-shirt. They came walking in, talking about out of place. They walked into a Yerushalmi house filled with Yerushalmi Yidden, Hasidische Yidden, Heilige Yidden. And these Yerushalmi Jews, they turn around as the door opens, and in walks two Chiloni Jews. T-shirt and jeans. And if you could picture the scene for a minute, if I was a betting man, probably the room just went silent. Like, guys, you lost? You lost? Instead, listen to what happened. The whole crowd of Yerushalmi Jews and Hasidim open up. They made way for these two Chiloni Jews to make their way up to the front. And then they handed them two chairs. They were greeted with such warmth and such love. And they sat them right in front of the mourning father, the Abba, that was still, his eyes were still dripping with tears, still crying over the loss of his two sons in the Meron tragedy. And these two Chiloni gentlemen are sitting in front of this Hasidic guy, Yerushalmi guy, Kadosh v'Tahor. And the Yerushalmi Yid, the Hasidic Yid, looks up at these two Chiloni guys, and he says to them, I'm so happy you came to sit with me. I'm so happy, I'm consoled that you came and showed up to sit with me. Even on this occasion, it means the world to me that I can get to meet you, and the two of you can get to meet me. And he starts wiping his tears away. And he turns to these two Chiloni Jews. And he tells to the guys in t-shirts and jeans, I'm asking you, now that we made a connection, albeit through such a situation, but now that we made this connection between me and you, I'm asking you, I would love to be invited to your semachot. And I in turn will invite you to mine. Because deep down in our hearts, every Jew passionately loves another, no matter what they look like, what their background is, what type of passport they hold in their back pocket, what lineage they come from, what minhagim they have. Dati, Chiloni, Ashkenazi, Sfaradi. We are pieces of one whole. You don't know what it means that you showed up today to be menachem me on my two sons. We are now connected for life, he tells these two guys. Everyone gets emotional in the room. Everyone. And the same salty teardrops the same salty teardrops dropped from the eyes of the father of the lost to these two boys and these two Chiloni Jews who came to visit. They all cried the same tears. And they leaned on each other and they wished each other a certain menachem of consolement. And these two Chiloni Jews get up and they walk out and they look at each other and they don't know what to say. And when they write this article, they end off saying, we are still speechless, but we are one. Ki ish echad ubelev echad. Do you see the connection now between Har Sinai and Eretz Yisrael? You said Naseh v'Nishma, didn't you? Did you know what you were signing up for? Tremendous, tremendous challenges. But just like on the Torah you said Naseh v'Nishma, on Eretz Yisrael you also said Naseh v'Nishma. Even when it came to moments like this, that the land is in an eerie way silent, Shvitat ha'aretz, in a very silent and healing way. And then my Rebbe, over the phone, Rabbi Rabinovich, told me, he said to me, Chaim David, listen to me. Listen to me. I want you to tell your kahal tonight. He knows that I speak every Friday night to the tzibur after Aleinu Shabeach and Shul. And ladies and gentlemen, if anyone's in the area, if you're ever around Friday night on our side of town, East 9th between T and U, Kahal HaKadosh Magen Abraham. We daven Mincha Shabbat at 7 p.m. every Shabbat throughout the summer. If you're ever in town, please come by. He says, I know you're speaking tonight. I want you to tell the tzibur the following. This is my Rebbe tells me on Friday, Lag BaOmer. He tells me like this. He says, we don't understand what just happened, and we won't until Mashiach comes. But one thing I will tell you. Right now in Shamayim, there's a fantastic hitorerut for rachmanut, for mercy. And he says, whether you can understand this or not. And I want to say, whether we can make peace with this or not. He says, but you'll see that now's the time for Klal Yisrael to have fantastic Yeshuot. He says, you're going to see now so many akarot, women that were waiting for years to have children, suddenly are going to be nifkedu. They're going to have kids. You're going to see that thousands of young ladies that were waiting to finally get married suddenly are going to get engaged. You're going to see so many people that were on the brink of certain health scare, danger, sakana of issue, suddenly will get healthy. And it'll happen quietly. The way Shamayim does things, quietly. Ki'ilu camouflage, behind the scenes, without really seeing what's going on. But my Rebbe said, understand that there's such a rachme Shamayim now. Jump, he told me. Tell them, schnell, quick, daven, now. Now. He says, he said to me a line, I'm scared to say it. I'm scared to say it in public. He says, there hasn't been a hitorerut for rachmanut and geula and mercy in heaven like this in a long time. He told me a certain amount of years, but I don't want to say it, in a long time. He says, chaparai now, between Lag BaOmer and Shavuot, we're going back to Matan Torah. Listen to me, Rabotai. This week's Parashat, we went from Matan Torah, Har Sinai, that's the name of the Parsha, Behar Sinai. We went from Har Sinai to Shvitat ha'aretz, to Eretz Yisrael. Now we're going from Eretz Yisrael back to Har Sinai. We're going to Shavuot now. We're going back to the mountain. We're standing back together again in Matan Torah. Ki ish echad ubelev echad. Now we're united. It's terrible that it takes these things to unite us. And we don't understand why they happen. And this is not the siba. This is the siman. It's not the reason, God forbid, why it happened. We don't know why it happened. But we do know what came out of it. We do know that right now in Israel, they're crying on each other's shoulders, and it makes no difference, religious or not. There's an achdut now in Eretz Yisrael of people pulling each other together like they haven't seen in a very long time. We just went back to Vayichan Sham Yisrael, Ki ish echad u'blev echad, and now we can go neged hahar. Now we can come to Shavuot. Amazing. This week's Parashat, Behar, Sinai. We went from Sinai to Israel. Now we're going from Israel to Sinai. I hope you see this. I hope you see it. And I hope you chaperine from what my Rebbe just told you. He told me now is the time to daven. He says every single day. He told me chaperine. You don't have a lot of days. This past Shabbat he told me get up and tell him finish the whole Tehillim this Shabbat. The Ben Ish Chai was known in Parashat Bo to tell us that any Avodat HaKodesh, any Torah that we learn, any Tehillim that we say on Shabbat is worth 1,000 times of the same thing done during the week. An hour of Tehillim on Shabbat is 1,000 hours during the week. An hour of Torah learning Shabbat is worth 1,000 hours of Torah during the week. You finish the book of Tehillim on Shabbat, 1,000 books of during the week. Can you imagine finishing the book of Tehillim 1,000 times? Do it once on Shabbat, and we'll get you there. Could you imagine? My Rebbe screamed, tell them! We're crying! Nahale d'ma'ot! You ever hear the term to walk between the raindrops? I want to be mechazik you between the teardrops. Nahale d'ma'ot. Because sha'are d'ma'ot lo nin'alu. Oh. From the Nahale d'ma'ot on earth, the sha'are d'ma'ot open wider and wider and wider. Hence my Rebbe told me, right now in Shamayim, there is an unbelievable hitorerut for mercy to cry out, Eibishter, let's end this already. Let's end this. Let's go home. Let's finish this. Let's finish this. We will mikabel Torah al yedei achdut. Let's be mikabel pnei Mashiach al yedei achdut. Let these 45 that gave their lives, let it at least be korbanot for a geula shlema. And like this, we'll get them back quickly. B'biat hagoel, b'tchiat hametim. And we'll get to dance together with them and the Rashbi. That's what we want out of this. Why did it happen? We have no idea. Only the Eibishter knows. Don't make cheshbonei shamayim and don't ask. Lama? Lama yomru hagoyim. Goyim ask lama. Jews don't ask lama. We have Hashem. But I'll tell you this. The achdut now is off the charts. So daven now, take the opportunity. My Rebbe told me from now, from Lag BaOmer until Matan Torah, until Shavuot, the achdut is so fiery. The Sharei D'Ma'ot are open because the Nahale D'Ma'ot is still flowing. And as long as the Nahale D'Ma'ot are flowing, and it breaks our hearts, but at the same time, the Sharei D'Ma'ot are open, so let's ask for a geula. Let's say enough. Come on, guys. We know at this point already that the American dream is done. It's done. The land that flowed milk and money. Ay, ay, ay. It's not milk and money that's flowing. Now it's the rivers of tears. It's time to go home. But we got to ask for it. We got to cry for it. We got to beg for it. to end this is only going to come al yedeh, a tremendous hitorerut for tshuva, a tremendous hitorerut for tefillah, and that's what we have now. Two Chiloni guys show up to the house of an ultra Haredi home. They wouldn't walk in the neighborhood. They wouldn't come down those streets. To walk into a house, a private domain of an ultra Orthodox society. Why did they show up? Because they heard that there was a Jew that lost two boys. They were able to break their challenges. They were able to break their walls. They were able to break their divisions. And they were able to break through to the house of a Yerushalmi, Hasidic Jew. And the father saw it, and he reciprocated. Why not we? Chaparayin and daven now. But let's daven for the Geula. Let's daven for the neshamot of those that we lost. But let's understand this week's parsha. And by the way, look at the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. The first Orach Chaim HaKadosh in this week's parasha. Orach Chaim HaKadosh asks the kasha of Rashi. Lama nismecha. Lama nismecha. Ma inyan shmita etzel har Sinai. Do you remember that? We grew up in that yeshiva as a kid. Ma inyan shmita etzel har Sinai. It's such a famous kasha that anytime someone says anything that has no shaykhis, one thing to the next, what does the guy say to him? What? What shaykhis? Ma inyan shmita etzel har Sinai. Yeah. Ma inyan shmita etzel har Sinai. What does shmita, Eretz Yisrael resting, have to do with Har Sinai? Answers Orach Chaim HaKadosh. The parsha started with Har Sinai mentioned to tell you that what happened by Har Sinai is the reason for getting Eretz Yisrael. You need a zechut to get Eretz Yisrael. You want to know what the zechut was? It was Har Sinai. And the simple pshat is, Kabbalat Torah. Give us the zechut to enter Eretz Yisrael. A Torah-dika people are the ones that receive Eretz Yisrael. And that's why the land spits you out if you don't have a Torah, if you don't have Yirat Shamayim. Yeah, that's the Pashut Pshat in Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Magnificent Pshat. But I want to say a drush on the Orach Chaim. Says Orach Chaim, you got Eretz Yisrael because of Har Sinai. But he also says you got Eretz Yisrael because of the pratea and the kedukea of Har Sinai. That means not just the big event. The big event was Matan Torah. But what else happened by Har Sinai? What else happened? Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Hahar Ki Ish Echad Ubelev Echad. What else happened by Har Sinai? Na'aseh v'nishma. You have Na'aseh v'nishma. You got that by Har Sinai. Then you'll get Eretz Yisrael al yedei Na'aseh v'nishma, even when we don't understand. It doesn't change a thing. We accepted Hashem. And we love Him no matter what. Even when we don't understand. Abba. Doesn't change a thing. Abba. 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 But at the same time, Rabotai, what else did we get by Har Sinai? Na'aseh v'nishma, Eretz Yisrael, Na'aseh v'nishma. Har Sinai, Achdut, Vayichan Sham Yisrael, Neged Hahar, Ish Echad Belev Echad. So you get Eretz Yisrael because of what? Achdut. Eretz Yisrael just brought us an Achdut. Through the Shvita, the silence. And we don't understand why. But we do understand that right now we're united. And there's a tremendous kesher from one to the next. I was thinking to myself, this past Shabbat, we were zocheh by us in Kahal Magen Abraham, Kahal Kadosh. We were zocheh to have an unbelievably talented and gifted individual. unnatural in my books. A great rabbi by the name of Rebbe Shapiro, Shalita, from North Miami Beach. He came to us and spoke Sudat Shalishit. What a delicious individual. What a wonderful person. It's the first time I met Rebbe Ephraim, and I was longing to meet him for a long time. I enjoyed listening to his clips over the years. He's a gift to Klal Yisrael, one of those great rabbis. So he was speaking Sudat Shalishit, and he said over an Avnei Nezer. God, I want you to hear this. Such an Avnei Nezer. He said Hashem Yishmuel, beautiful. But let me just share with you this Avnei Nezer. The Avnei Nezer writes that it's a little bit of a pele. We all know as children that right before Matan Torah, to make things fair, no one should have ta'anot. Hashem went to all the nations. He went to the Goyim. He went to Yishmael. He said, Yishmael, you want my Torah? So he says, Yishmael said, what does it say? It says, Lo tirtzach. Now it's interesting. I remember as a kid, my Rebbe told us, Lo tinaf, because Yishmael took 9/10, right? But he said over the version of the Medrash. The Midrash says that Yishmael Bemet said, Lo tirtzach. Lo tirtzach. Hashem said, Yishmael, you can't kill. So ISIS says, what? What do you mean? What else am I going to make videos with? I mean, of course we can kill. We don't want it. What's ISIS without killing? We don't want it. Yishmael says, no thank you. No thank you. Hashem goes to Esav. Esav, you want the Torah? Esav says, what does it say? Lo tignov, lo tigzol. We can't steal. How's the mafia going to live without... Says Borei Olam, I'm sorry. Says Esav, we don't want it. Asks the Avnei Nezer. You know, when Hashem went to these nations, he found their nekudah of their essence. And he basically asked them a question that went against their grain. He knew that Yishmael was based on Ritzicha, Yado Bakol v'Yad Kol Bo. He was nidmet Malach HaMavet. If you heard that great class we gave some time ago about Reb Chaim Kanievsky and Chadgadya, Reb Chaim held that the Malach HaMavet was Yishmael, right? Yishmael, which is scary when you hear that when you live in America. But Yishmael outlives the Shochet, which he holds as Esav. Oh boy. But nonetheless, Yishmael's the Malach HaMavet. So Yishmael has to kill. So Hashem told him, my Torah says you can't kill. Basically, my Torah says you can't be you. You want it? So what do you expect him to say? You asking me to go against my grain? My whole essence is killing. So of course I don't want it. He comes to Esav. Esav, you want the Torah? But you can't steal. But what do you mean? I live to steal. So every time he asked them something that was against their essence, says the Avnei Nezer, you're doing this to be fair. The nations are going to still show up and say, what did you ask Klal Yisrael that was against their essence? And they still said yes. Let's make it fair. Did Hashem ask us something that's against our essence? And we went against it, and Bechol Zot said, we're ready to go against what where makeup is, and we'll take it anyways? Where is that? If you want to make it fair, it got to be straight across the board. What a kasha. Avnei Nezer. Says Rebbe Ephraim, says the Avnei Nezer, guess what? You missed it. Hashem did ask Klal Yisrael to go against their essence, go against their very DNA and makeup, and still accept the Torah on those terms. Really? Psh. What part of the Medrash did we miss? Where is that? Where is that? All we know is Hashem asks us, you want the Torah? We said Nasav and Ishma. Where is the essence? So I was thinking to myself, what do you mean? Do you know what a Jew is? Nasav and Ishma? We're the biggest lamdanim on earth. We're the biggest lamdanim, the biggest Baal Be'ayun on earth. If we don't fashtei a sugya inside out, we can't sleep. You're telling me to go with it anyways? That's against my essence. That's what I was thinking. But obviously, it's nothing good enough or clear to the answer of what the Avnei Nezer gave. Says the Avnei Nezer, listen to this. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm coming down to the Har. I'm coming down with the myriads of angels. I'm coming down to Klal Yisrael. And therefore, you need to be magbil et hahar. You need to set these huge boundaries and tell Klal Yisrael, you can't come close to me. Says the Avnei Nezer, Hashem's telling Klal Yisrael, although a Jew's essence is kirvat Hashem, we live, we long, we minute to minute scream relationships of avodah, of tefillah, of learning, of life growth, of understanding, and it's all to bring to a closeness. And now you tell me I can't be close? Now you tell me I have to accept you from a distance? But my whole makeup is to be close to you. My whole makeup is a body that has a piece of you inside of me, a neshama that's a chelik me'elokai mima'al. And sure enough, Taka, when the Eibishter came down on the mountain, our neshama left us. When he said, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, we shot back 12 mil and we died. And Borei Olam had to come and do Tchiat HaMetim. And then we were brought back to the mountain again. Could you imagine? They Ubered us back. And then Borei Olam said the second of the Dibrot. We shot back again 12 mil. Died again. Do you understand the cheshek that a Jew has for the Eibishter, for Borei Olam? And Hashem said, Magbil Gvul. You can't come past here. Could you do that? Could you go against your essence and still be ready to accept me in the Torah against your essence, and you still want it? And we screamed, Naaseh v'nishma, yes! We'll go against our very calling and makeup of closeness to Hashem and take you on all terms, even distant terms. That distance showed the greatest closeness of history. I'm ready to bleed for you. I'm ready to die for you. If I need to be distant to show closeness, so be it. But I'll go and get my essence. And that's why it was fair. Amazing. To Ishmael to kill, to an Esav to steal, is equal of a taiva to a Jew of Kirvat Hashem. Do you hear what I'm telling you? Do you hear who you are? Do you hear what Hashem taught us that night? That morning, rather? Do you hear what Hashem taught us by Har Sinai? Do you understand what we're counting down to Shavuot now? We're counting down to Kirvat Hashem in an incredible way. He made us go against that essence. And we said yes anyways. And now it's literally equal, all nations of the world, across the board. And we came on top. And we passed what they failed. Unbelievable. I was thinking to myself, wow. Kirvat Hashem. It's amazing. Hashem says, I'm going to test you and see if you can go against your essence. And see if you can stand back and not charge forward towards me. But he never asked us to have any richuk from each other. I'm going to test you with your Kirvat Hashem. But I will never ask you to be tested with your Kirvat Klal Yisrael. Because there's nothing more important to me, says Borei Olam, than Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged hahar ki ish echad ubelev echad. that I won't even test you. I will never ask that from you. Because that to me is the ultimate. Kirvat Hashem, I'll gamble. I'll Davnei Nezer. I'll test you. I don't mean gamble, chas v'shalom. I mean I'll test you. That's what I meant. I'll test you. I'll see if you can put a gvul around the mountain and overcome your inner essence to want to come forward. And if you can overcome that, then you've passed the test that the other nations did not pass. Magnificent Vart. But I will not ask you to overcome ever your Kirvat Yisrael. That I'll never ask. Because to me that is the ultimate, and that is not something that should ever be touched. Because that in itself maybe is the biggest nisayon that we have today, is the Kirvat Yisrael, Klal Yisrael. Vayichan sham Yisrael neger ahar, ki ish echad ubelev echad. It's with that we went to Israel. And now it's from Israel and Meron. The mountain of Meron, we're going to the mountain of Sinai. Do you hear what I'm telling you? But you got to go with all the detail. You got to go with all the detail. We just picked up the Achdut from Meron, and now we're going to the mountain that the whole Torah was based on, the Achdut of Klal Yisrael and the Kirvat Elokim. Whew. Wow. It's amazing sometimes what we have to go through in order to draw people together. It's amazing sometimes what we have to suffer through. I remember back many good years ago when I was learning in Eretz Yisrael. I was in Yeshivat Itri for many good years, and I loved that yeshiva. Remichel Zilba, Shalita, Diane Fisher, Shalita, who I was zeichet to learn with Becharusa for quite a few years. And my Rebbe, the Gera Ilui, Reb Simcha Schiff, Shlita, who I also was zeichet to learn and be a little bit of a ben bias by him for many years. Rabbi Elephant, Zechet Tzadik L'Bracha, who took me in, and he showed me a person that was bigger than life. I've never met someone that incredible, that powerful, that charismatic. He knew every brisker of that ever was written, and even those that weren't written. I remember one night, just to mention, I don't even know why I'm saying this, it's nothing to do with the share. One night, we decided one zman that we were going to learn Kodshim for a night Seder, just to break out a little bit from the Noshim Nezikin cycle that we were doing for so many years. Something new. I mean, where else are we going to get it from? We didn't go to Brisk. So we wanted to get a Tom. So we asked from Shlomo Fisher to give a shiur in Kodshim. Because Reb Shlomo was such a goyin of Kol HaTorah Kula on his fingertips, Nigla and Nistar. He's the Mechaber of the Beis Yishai. That for him to give a shiur on Kodshim, we're not asking him to put himself out. Because to him it's, it's Kol HaTorah Kula. He's a Mayana Midgaber. Anyone that knows who I'm talking about knows good and well what I'm saying. So we started, he wanted to learn Tmura first. Not sure why. So one zman we learned the entire Tmura. One night, we didn't know, but Reb Shlomo Fisher had a wedding, and the guy that he sent to tell us forgot. So we're all sitting in the Azat, in the back room, in the library, where the shiurim of Tmura would take place. And we're waiting for the Rebbe, Reb Shlomo, to come in with our notebooks. We prepared the sugyot. We're waiting. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Nothing, nobody shows up. We're thinking maybe something happened. Just then, we hear a sound of slippers coming down the hallway from the main Bet Midrash to the back where the Azat was, the room, waiting for the Shi'ur. And we hear tss, 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 tss. Thinking, who showed up to Bet Midrash in slippers? The door to the room of the library opens, and we see Rabbi Elephant stick his head in the room with the sunglasses, the big beautiful peot, and a $1 trillion smile. Anyone that knew Rabbi Elephant, Zechet Tzadik Lebracha, his smile melted you, whether you liked it or not. And he comes in, and he's wearing a smoking rekel. It's like a smoking jacket, but it's a little bit longer, tied with a very sharp tie and the sunglasses. And he's holding his legendary glass of ice and a Diet Coke, because he had his famous line, Im ein kerach ein Torah. He had ice filled up to the top. He had migraines. He loved the ice. And he comes walking in his slippers. Tss, tss, tss. He sits down, and we're all... See, sometimes you wouldn't see Rabbi Elephant for a few months. Sometimes he would literally hibernate in his study for months, learning wee hours of day and night to his own tune. That night he shows up out of the blue, comes walking in, and he says, I hear that there's a chabur of kodshim, you hear? You guys learning Torah? I learned Torah by Rebbe Malin. So what daf are you on? So we told him what daf we're on. So he tells us that Reb Shlomo Fisher had a wedding, and at the last minute the guy called him panicking that he forgot to tell us, so he called Rabbi Elephant and asked him to come upstairs to give us a share on Kodshim. We said, when did he call you? 5 minutes ago, yeah. I got the call 5 minutes ago. Yeah. So what sugya are you learning? So I'm thinking to myself, he got the call 5 minutes ago. So we told him the sugya. So he starts saying over the sugya. He has no Gemara in front of him. No Gemara. He starts saying over the sugya, Shakal V'Tarya, blow by blow, piece by piece. And then he highlights one Tosafot, and he starts saying out the Tosafot, word for word, Baal Peh, Kasha Teretz Raya, Kasha Teretz Raya. And we're like, and then he gives over a share that blew our minds. He says over Briskerov, he says over Chaim, he says over Torah that he claims the Briskerov told him that never made it through the lines of Brisk, which, don't shoot. I'm just the messenger. But nonetheless, he gave us a share that night. We couldn't write the notes fast enough. Then he gets up and he smiles because he knew he blew us away. And as he's walking out, Rabbi Elephant turns around and he says to us, in Hebrew, so you guys are impressed. Ma itchem, don't you know? An elephant never forgets. I said over the shit to Reb Leib 47 years ago. And I have it on my fingertips. And he turns around and he walks out. This was good years. I missed those years of Eretz Yisrael's learning. I missed those years of Eretz Yisrael's excitement and its lightning and its magic and its siyata d'shmaya and the avir. I don't want to cry in front of you now. I'm starting to think back to those years. Thursday nights. There wasn't a Thursday night that we didn't learn all night. 4 o'clock in the morning, somebody orders up a taxi. We jump in, we go to the kotel. We get there in time for Vatikin. We watch that moment that the birds begin to fly around you at the moment that the sun starts to come up. And how, what was it, 30, 40 minyanim, hustle and bustle, ra'ash. And then on that same split second, the whole world goes silent. And it's just you and the stones. And the Eibishter's hug. I miss Eretz Yisrael so much. So much. But it was those times of difficulty that brought so many people together. Nachamu, nachamu ami. We should be zocheh be'ezat Hashem. That Klal Yisrael should go from the mountain of Meron to the mountain of Har Sinai. Vayichan sham Yisrael neged hahar ki ish echad u'belev echad. We should be zocheh not just to the kolot u'brakim and the shofar of Matan Torah, but tika b'shofar gadol l'cherutenu. Thank you for listening.